Hello, welcome to Chess Comedy Books42. I've got some random magazines here which have been hanging about on my bookshelves, and I'm sorting them all out at the moment. So I thought I'd show you some of these and see what it leads to. The first is written about 12 years ago by me. It's a copy of the Chess Parrot, which is the magazine I used to edit. And on the cover is a very dear friend of mine, Hugh Myers, who died. And Hugh was very inspirational to me. We corresponded and he encouraged me. I tried to encourage him, but he encouraged me. Here we have Hillary Clinton and a certain gentleman who became president of the United States. It's a nice little chess gathering, don't you think? Bye for now, folks, it says. Well, bye for now indeed. These are games by Keith Arkle, whom I interviewed. This is mostly, apart from the tribute to Hugh Myers, and Gerard Welling also pays his respects to his great friend, and I'm now friends with Gerard as well. Gives games by Hugh, 5, 6 games, and then an interview with Danny Gormley. There you are. Interview with a GM. I've got some books by Danny Gormley, actually. It's about time I dusted them off. There's an interview with Adam Ralph. For the second time I was going to interview him for BCM. We were thinking of going through the interview that he did for the Parrot. That's this. And then saying, do you still think that? And like with Andy Warhol, where when he was interviewed, he just said yes, no, two alternate questions, regardless of what he was being asked. Some games of Adams. Not all of them best games, they're just games. There we are. I think I got the format very well in the end. A nice mix of diagrams and an interview with Gwaine Jones. I'll never know how to pronounce this first name, will I? But he was very kind and gave his time up. An interview with Bernard Cafferty. There we are. Young Bernard. Some games. Confessions of a Grandmaster. Keith Arkle didn't really want to be interviewed formally. I sent him some questions, but true to form, he didn't answer them. But the flavour of what I conveyed, he channeled back at me. So although it appeared that, first up, that he hadn't really done what I asked, he did us proud. And I'm pleased to say that to him. He did us proud. So that was the Chess Parrot number 26. I think I did up to 28 or 29 or something. I can't quite remember. Here's another magazine I did. Audio Chess. Audio Chess was cassette chess instruction. About 40 years ago with and for Mike Pasman. Michael is a Surrey-based international master who his specialization is irregular openings, and also he's very good at writing instructional articles, and he's just an all-round good egg. A cassette review by me. My God, was I good at typing in those days. There we are. There you are. A Wrinkle in the English Defence. by Otto Hardy. This was issue 4. We did 6 issues. So, yeah. And talking of Otto Hardy, here is a booklet, not a magazine, about the English defence. Beloved of Tony Miles, and to a lesser extent, though enormously, John Spielman. They're both of them, really, isn't it? This booklet was one of 2 which Otto did. The games are quite a mixed bag. No disrespect to my late friend, but they are a mixed bag of the good, the bad, and the indifferent. Otto used to get very upset if things didn't go his way. He was a very emotional person, for somebody who was also so logical. That gives you a standard of an indication of higher level as I ever reached in terms of presentation. But maybe, as Basman would say to me in a different context, not enough diagrams. An update study in the light of modern theory based on a game C. Horsley, Otto Hardy. So, he gives his games, and then he'd give one by Botvinnik or something. And then he switched back to his games against, a rapid play against John Tate or something. There we are. It's pretty dense content, isn't it? And this is the Hull Chess Club magazine production by E.W. Fisher. Well, E.W. Fisher, thank you for the fun that you have reserved in this small, modest publication. Here's to it. Now, produced in 1971. Look at this. This is a real little collector's item. The first North Devon Chess Congress, published by the Hexagon and edited by the one and only P.H. Clarke. I can assure you, if you wanted a holiday and you couldn't get as far as Switzerland, but you wanted Swiss conditions, the north of Devon can give you all you want and more. Many games here, many strong players as well. George Bothwell, at the bottom. And in the lists also, one of his last ever congresses, probably was actually, Harry Collenbeck. Vernon Dilworth, who was to give his name to the passionately and his passions to the variation of the Lopez. I think it was knight takes e4 and then knight takes f2 and then rook takes, and it's pinned with the bishop on c5, but you don't recapture immediately. I think play f6 or something. Botvinnik commended Dilworth for his enterprise and accuracy of everything, I suppose, really. A game by the very much missed Steve Boniface. Steve died young. And, I still remember that horrible night when I was told, I didn't want it to be true, that he had passed away. And the tournament was won by P. Waters. He was quite a find for the West of England chess. With Bellin and Botterill, Brucey, Harding, and Bob Taylor. Last round games. A few quid on offer on some of them. PC Griffiths, S.J. Hutchings. Some of these names are still with us, and others, sadly, no longer playing, no longer with us, maybe. A couple of BCMs here. I'll just quickly show you that. I've been into BCMs before, really. This is the very first one that John Upham and I did. This is my proof copy. It's black with annotations. And here we have Mr. Hawkins, I think. There he is. He looks concentrating, but also a bit bored. He's possibly not bored with what he's seeing, but he's bored with what he's thinking, which isn't necessarily the same thing, is it? Here's an interesting magazine, the Maryland Chess Newsletter. I love these little fanzines. This is an area, obviously, of the US of A. Pay close attention to those players who are slightly better than you. Oh, yes. Let's take my glasses off. Look over their games in the regional chess publications. Get them to analyze and explain to you tournament games they win or draw. And when you're up for a lesson, practice against them. Remember, nobody whose rating exceeds yours by much more than 200 points. That's 200 USCF points, or ELO if you prefer. These days, everyone's got an ELO, even your mum. In those days, it was an international rating. Look at that. That's very creative use of graphics, isn't it? I mean, all the information is there, and you can read it. And you can read it. Well, of course you can read it, but the point I'm making is that it's, you know, it's quite manageable, approachable, readable. It's everything. It's all the things you could want there. Either even stuck in a diagram. You're not put off, you're drawn in. And that's exactly what you want. Nice little mag. Wish I had a lot more of those. And talking of a nice little mag, here's another nice little mag. Sent to me so long ago by Lara Barnes. I'm still in contact with Lara. She's quite busy. And chess has been good to her, I hope. I think these days she's more interested in music. She presents some annotated games, quite well annotated games. Here we are. There's an egg cut. Asking whether it's en passant. I have to die laughing. It's quite an amusing little tableau. Oh, look, there was a question tonight on University Challenge. How many moves does it take a knight to go from A1 to H8? And I said 4, and the answer was 6. And there's a knight's tour. I touched on this, but not quite in this format, some time ago. Well, there we are. There we are. I suppose I could cut that out and put it anywhere I really wanted to. I'm running out of words, aren't I, tonight? A bit tired, I suppose. I've been in contact, many of us have, with Murray Chandler, who's gone back to his native New Zealand. And this is one of the magazines which he has gone back to, and is showing old games and things like that, photographs, cards, everything from his friends. And he's plotting as much as his games as his successes and his travels. Murray was a very self-motivated man, still is, I expect. So you can see this is done on an electronic typewriter. But it remains, even though it's 40 years and more out of date, rather good. Here's something close to my heart. It's the Basingstoke Chess magazine. If I was to go through this, you'd fall on the floor laughing. Ken Harmon and I did this together. It's the first effort. And there's an interview, a book review by James Pratt. And here's some results, also by me. Some problems. An explanation of the grading system, which Basman likes so much, that he reproduced it, I think, in Rabbit's Review. Something like that. Anyway. An article which I reproduced twice after this, Victor the Great. Victor, in this case, is, of course, Victor Korchnoi. And it is done by Ken Harmon's brother, late brother, Ron Harmon. There we are. Book of Poems and Games by the one and only Kathy Forbes. There's Kath. And a fragile flower, torn asunder, its loftiest petals purloined for brief abuse, before its withered shards are finally trampled into the dust of memory, while from a mutilated ruin a gentle summer breeze will bear away the tiny smithereens of beauty's sad soul. And she wrote that. It's a poem called The Destroyer when she was 14. Kathy was one of these seemingly she won't have to mind my saying this, though she may mind very much, precocious young women. There was a young woman who was quite well-to-do. She had so few worries, she didn't know what to do. She made herself pregnant, homeless hell to pay, had a nervous breakdown. Then she was okay. Oh, I remember this one. I remember reading it at the time. This is for some considerable time ago. It's easy to die in London. The cars come so fast. The drivers in such a hurry, all in pursuit of some absolute or other. It's easy to die in London because time is money, to be saved before being burnt. Better die rich than live without a stitch. All agree. It's easy to die in London, weighed down with stress, cholesterol, and deferred gratification. But the laugh's on you, birds who never flew, never sang. It's easy to die in London, big and little fish alike, poisoned in the sea of ethanol and opiates. Gild the lily willy-nilly, see it wilt. It's easy to die in London because luck is a lottery. Like magic, the hospital becomes a posh block. No more smears here. Hard luck, my dear. Try next year. It's easy to die in London because you'll not be mourned. Only one worshipper less in the temple. No sorrow. FTSE will still be here tomorrow. Chin up, chaps. It's easy to die in London because the system is so perfect that humanity is optional. So why bother breathing, sweating, seething? Why not rest? It's easy to die in London because you are probably superfluous. So feel no quilt, conscientious consumer sorry, that should have been guilt. So feel no quilt. So feel no guilt, conscientious consumer. For when you are gone, the show will go on and on. That was a poem called, you'll not be surprised to hear, It's Easy to Die in London by Kathy Forbes. We'll have one more from Kathy, I think. This is called The Deal, and it's in the section called The Feminist. If to your husband you'll do honour and him obey, he will swear to love and cherish you from day to day. If until death you'll ne'er from him depart, will endeavour to make himself dear to your heart. And if from peccadilloes you will refrain, your husband will have nothing of which to complain. A poor deal, it's true, but the men have ordained that to live such a life is a contentment attained. Moreover, if you grant your husband these concessions from life, he will acknowledge and respect you as the perfect wife. And according to Kathy, she wrote that when she was 10. I wouldn't put it past her. She also gives some games. So the notation incongruously. Maybe there's too much poetry here for chess players and too much chess here for poets, putative and otherwise. Here she draws with David Norwood in 1977. There we are. See? It's a Sicilian. Kathy somewhat prides herself on not knowing any openings. She knows bits and bobs. A silver streak, a cleaving slash across my cheek, a stinging lash, a well of red, a sudden flush, complexion scorched with burning blush, lips compressed for teeth to crush, suspended in a frozen hush. And that was called Jibe. It was written by Kathy when she was 13. She writes about Mrs. Thatcher in the way that Adrian Mole did. Do you weep, Mrs. Thatcher? Do you weep? If you don't know that poem by Sue Townsend, I'll leave you to look it up. Well, we've gone far from the chessboard, but I make no apology. Now, here's a little thing. It's called Loss of Time and Space, and it is a study of a line in the Alekhine defense, which I put together this little booklet nearly 20 years ago now. The stupid thing was that I'd forgotten I wrote it and I left it in my desk. This would have been the desk. And I found it some years later and I thought, well, what in the world was I thinking? For some reason, I either lost heart or lost interest or just forgot. I think it likely, knowing me, I lost heart. Looking through it now, it's perhaps a bit thin in content, but I didn't want, this is how I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be, as Kathy did here, I think, quality, not quantity. This is obviously a proof copy where I've annotated the text, for better or for worse. This went to 3 printings, so 75 copies. And I sent 1 or 2 abroad, which seems to increase the glamour and mystique. And Mike Basman rather liked it and offered me some money for it. Unfortunately, something else suddenly happened on top of it, and we couldn't proceed. A few more copies of BCM, not ones I had anything to do with. More copies of BCM. Postal History by D.J. Rogers. Daniel Rogers and his wife Jean were a couple of bright sparks and live wires in the chess world. Here's another Chess Parrot, number 27. Looks like it's got sunstroke. That's rather good, isn't it? A board, and then there's pieces on it, and there's a little chessboard on the big chessboard. And there's games in here from my associates at Cavendish Chess Club. I always worry I'm going to say Caversham, get the 2 muddled up. photographs of the players. There's Mr. Matthew Piper playing Mr. Bob Eames. I always think Bob Eames is a very underrated player, but somebody will contact me and say, no, I'm not. I'm very good anyway, in my own right. No one sent you a word. There's Andrew Martin, in the days when he was fond of having a motorbike and eating too many fish and chips. Nowadays, he goes swimming every day, I'm told. And there's Michael MacDonald Ross in his younger days. Now, he's a very underrated author who wrote a very underrated booklet, Mr. David Levens. David has become a fully qualified tennis coach and has also written novels with no chess connection, I don't mean. And this, like the works of Tim Onions, is a self-published, but very interesting. I mean, you might say this is for beginners, but believe you me, there's more experienced players, and I hold my hand up, who have looked through these in recent times and picked up little things. Also quite nice illustrations and creative use of colour, which obviously bumps up the price. This is £5. And you might think, wow, that seems a lot of money for a booklet. Don't you believe it? You go through this will take you, a few days, more than a few days. Meanwhile, you can get little illustrations like that. And I assume all of these are original. This is part of a 4-part series. Some more copies of my booklet on the Alekhine defense with 2 knight g8. So as soon as it's attacked, you put it back on the original square. And here we have part 2 of the Otto Hardy series on the English defense, where you play f5 and the pawn captures all the way up the line. And meanwhile, black, well, you can come in and take the rook. Who cares about the rook when you're caring about the king? Yeah. And it's got Otto's inimitable style, and he always finds time and space for his own games. So, yes, this game's by Anand Sadler, Kengis, and John Spielman on one double page. And then turn over and there's a game by Alan Barton from Huddersfield. This is even more wonderful. It's again by David Levens, and it is the middle game book. It really is a work of art. I love it. Here we go, look. David Levens is a strong club player, once officially ranked in top 50 players in the UK. He certainly was, when he competed in the British Championship on 3 occasions and also scored victories over several of England's international players. Now he's a highly successful professional coach of 17 pupils, boys and girls, having represented England at one level or another over the last 11 years. We can't argue with that. He's talking about the double bishop sacrifice. I wonder whether he's going to include that game by Lasker. No, Kasparov, Portish. Even gives a Rabar index and their ELO ratings. Frank Marshall versus Amos Byrne. Just when I thought it was safe to go back into the room. Emmanuel Lasker, except he misspelled Emmanuel and Lasker. One of those is a finger slip, I think, but the other isn't. Here's something that didn't last very long, like all the best publications. Knight's File. I still have these and look them through. It's done by Mr. Michael Knight. Now, if you look here, he's got Review of a computer. I mean, look at that. That's the publication standard, isn't it? Look. He's obviously put in a fair bit of work on this. This is from 41 years ago. Here's another one. Slipped neatly into envelopes and was sent out. Sadly, he lost. Well, obviously, he didn't get the pickup that he wanted. Goes through the games from the Hubner-Korchnoi match of, I suppose, 1980. Building up to see who was going to play Karpov. Brighton International. Ray Keane's inventions. Quite frankly, one of Ray Keane's triumphs. The magazine I didn't edit but was offered. Rabbit's Review. Rabbit's Review. Again, a hand-typed one. Rabbit's Review ran its course. I don't know how many issues there were, 7 or 8 or something, which is what their plan was. And then it became Popular Chess. And Mike and I did Audio Chess News, which I just showed you. In fact, I think it was the first thing I showed you. It's a very interesting article by Nigel Povar about the Lopez. It really is top notch. And it says in brackets, candidate I am. Nigel is a correspondence grandmaster. It presents a game from the point of view of the players, and then Basman inserts his masterly touch to it. In other words, that's what you thought, and that's how you were feeling when you're sitting at the board. But what should you actually have been doing? And other perspectives start to emerge. Well, we've been through quite a lot of stuff. I've been whittering on for half an hour. This has been Chess Comedy Books 42. I'm James Pratt, and thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.